Okay, we're going to talk about receiving a piece of marquetry from somebody else, or if you do make your own, what to do next. So this is called an assembly board. And when you are using the French method, you'll cut the pieces for the marquetry, and then you will put them together on this assembly board, which is a piece of, this happens to be plywood with kraft paper stretched tight across it, all right, and glued at the edges, and it's free on the inside. It's not glued anywhere on this face. The kraft paper's not. And then you spread your hide glue over the kraft paper, and you assemble your marquetry face down. This is the back side that you see. So you assemble it face down on the kraft paper. In this case, I have two positive and negative of the same piece, and they're assembled on the assembly board. And once the glue dries and you've done your mastic, which I haven't done to this, this is just for demonstration purposes, you can cut your piece off the kraft paper. Now I've already cut this to show you. When you cut it off the kraft paper, it comes off just like that. All right. Now this is ready to be attached to whatever furniture or woodwork or box or whatever you're building separately, or it can be shipped to somebody else to use. Okay. Now, when you cut this off, this side with the kraft paper is the show side. This is the face. This side that you see is the back. This is the side that's going to get glued down. Okay? So I'm going to use this piece of plywood as my woodwork. All right? This is what I'm going to attach my marquetry to right here. So when I glue this down, I'm going to glue it down like this with the kraft paper facing up. You will never see the face of the actual finished face of the marquetry until it's attached and all this gets scraped off, and then it will actually reveal itself. You get a really good idea from the back, but the actual face you don't see until just about the very end. Okay, so I'm going to get some high glue and we're going to glue this down the next step. Okay, so here I've got some hot high glue in the double boiler in the glue pot. It's at a pretty good temperature, about 140 Fahrenheit. My assistant has brought me some newsprint we're going to use when we glue this on. All right, viscosity. Oh, that's a little big slug. Viscosity is pretty good. It's probably a little thin, but it'll do for this. Put this on. Okay, just set those down for a second, please. All right, so I'm gonna glue this side down to my finished piece. Okay, if I was routing out a recess for this so that it would sit flush, I would of course do that first. But in this case, it's just a demonstration. I'm not going to do that. So what I will do is I will mark it so I know how much glue to put on roughly. This is just so I know what I'm gluing down here. All right, now if I really wanted to be, if I knew exactly which direction I wanted this thing, if I wanted this to point that direction, okay? So when I turn it over, I'd get it right the first time. I could mark it as so. All right, so I'll take some high glue. Try not to make a mess on my bench top. Do this kind of quick because high glue does set up. All right, that's pretty good. Take this, press that down. Now may I have that newsprint? Okay, now I would take the newsprint just as a to use as padding. Okay, in case there's some uneven depths to the marquetry, that's just some padding there between the substrate and my clamping. Now in this case, I'm just going to use a couple of 1/2-inch steel plates. They're pretty heavy. That's probably 20 or 30 pounds of steel sitting on top of there to act as my clamp. really I should probably put this in a press, either vacuum press or mechanical press, or even just I guess you could use some clamps if it wasn't too big, but I'm going to use the steel plates to hold that down. That provides pretty good force. And then once that high glue dries, I will demonstrate how to remove the kraft paper. Okay, we're back to our marquetry. So this is set overnight and the high glue is now dry. So I'll take my clamps off, and the newsprint that was acting as just a padding. And yeah, it's some newsprint, sticks to the glue or is exposed, it's not a big deal. So now we got to get this kraft paper off of the marquetry. So what I have here is a tray of water, cold tap water. Okay, do not use warm or hot water for this. It will ruin the marquetry. Okay, because the high glue will release once it gets moist and warm. So we use cold water for this. We've got a couple sponges, just a regular old big poofy sponge like you might use for tiling, and I have a green Scotch-Brite type sponge for later in the process, and I have a regular old razor blade, kind of straight razor blade like you use in a scraper. Okay, do not use a card scraper for this, a cabinet scraper. If you use a scraper like this with a sharpened edge, a burr on it, and you're scraping this thing, that sharpened edge, I almost guarantee you, is going to catch an edge of the marquetry and is going to rip it out, and you will be upset. So do not use this for this process. Okay, so we're just going to take our sponge, get it damp, all right? Get most of that water out. Okay, we're going to moisten the kraft paper. All right, just a little bit, not too much. We don't want it pooling on this thing, but we want enough moisture on there that it's going to absorb into the kraft paper. You can already see these darker spots where it is starting to absorb into the kraft paper, and that's getting down into maybe a little bit of glue that's got the kraft paper glued down. So I'm going to let that sit for and soak it in for a little bit. I'm going to get it just a little bit more damp. Continue letting that soak in. Now we're going to use the razor blade to act as our scraper. And I'm simply going to start scraping carefully the paper. All right. Notice I'm leaning like this. I'm not digging in. Okay. I'm going to tilt it away and scrape with that razor blade. You can see the paper starting to come off in layers. See that? Comes off in layers. And as you start to get that top layer off, you need to wet it some more. Okay, so in just a second here, I'll wet it again. And while that soaks in over there, I'll come work over here. And you see here I had, in this marquetry I used some veneer tape when I was making the packet, and you can kind of see it poking through right here a little bit. That's gonna come off too. And that's a little bit deeper in the layer, so that'll get moistened in a little bit. You'll notice I, oh, that was a lot. That was probably too much. I work this area, and I moisten it. I'm gonna let that soak, okay? Let that soak. I come over here, where I haven't worked, which has been soaking up some of that moisture, and work on that area, while this over here soaks. Now, especially once you start getting down to more of the wood, you want to be careful how much moisture you put in there. You might loosen up. So at this point, I'm going to switch to my green Scotch-Brite. Get it damp again. Again, damp, not soaking wet. And this thing is a little bit stiff from previous use. It's got some glue stuck in there. All right. Ooh, that's a little bit too much. Let's get some of that water out of there. Okay, damp. Take a paper towel, wipe it down. Ah, you really